all NBA teams are finally out. The list is here. The teams are here. I found no issue with it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Let me just go through them first, though. So, first team, you got Jokic, SGA, Luka, Giannis, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's the one that people are kind of arguing about. I don't know why. I think he's kind of struggled in the playoffs for the most part. So the short-term memory and kind of just forgetting that these things get voted on before the playoffs. I don't see it with Jason Tatum there, but second team, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, Kawhi Leonard. Again, I'm good with it. Third team, Devin Booker, Stephen Curry, Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron James, Domantas Sabonis. Now, Domantas Sabonis seems to be the controversial one, right? Me personally, I've seen Bam Adebayo is feeling snubbed about it, and I think he should, in a sense, because he also had a really good year on his own. But even as a Miami Heat fan, do I feel a way about it? Do I feel like Bam was snubbed? Not necessarily. I think Domantas Sabonis, one, he plays out west, so there's less people watching. And two, he doesn't have a entertaining game unless you're like sort of a basketball nerd in a sense, I guess. But he had a very good fucking year. He broke all kinds of double-double records. He had a crazy like triple-double run at one point. He's a player who is a lot of times misunderstood based on the players he's compared to, including Bam. But he's just not somebody I've ever been able to take anything away from. When you talk about passing bigs, it's Jokic, I think, and then there's him. And so there's that skill set. There's obviously the rebounder. You can't keep him off the glass. You can't stop him from scoring, even though he just sort of added a jumper somewhere around last season, but really this season he started to show a little more. But Domantas Sabonis, I feel like, is a very misunderstood and underrated player. And it's kind of always been that way. But it's been ramping up now lately, and I don't really understand it because the Kings are good. So I don't know.
No, yeah, I'm cool with the teams personally. I absolutely think Sabonis should have gotten a team invite for the same reasons you stated: the double-double, the consistency, NBA rebounding leader this year. Like all those things factor into that. They also like it's position specific, and you know he was arguably the third best center this year, obviously, if you don't count Embiid's injury and stuff. But like it's cool with me. Like the vote is cool on the defensive end. That's not the case, but to be honest, most of these awards are offensive awards, anyways.
Yeah, I think also just it's an expectation thing. I think a lot of times Bam gets snubbed for stuff. Aside from defense player of the year, obviously he should have won that in 2022, in my opinion. But he gets snubbed for stuff at times because people are ignoring his defense or not really understanding his defense. And that's an easy thing to get frustrated by because as people who have votes for awards and you're obviously you're a journalist and you're sort of I don't want to say big deal in basketball in a sense, but you have some sort of cachet to yourself. And so maybe you should pay more attention to defense. But I've just grown not to expect that or really care, especially since we started this thing ourselves. And so it kind of just is what it is. It's an offensive-centric game from the viewpoint of a lot of fans and a lot of media, whatever it is, because offense is the easy thing to understand and the easy thing to see. And like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I just stopped banging my head against the wall trying to understand why that is and trying to change things.
No, absolutely. Another very interesting thing that came out of these, all NBA is that, Tyrese Halliburton and Anthony Edwards are now eligible for like the Supermaxes. So, obviously shout out to both of those guys who we'll obviously touch on later in this episode. But so I understand the way certain players feel when they get snubbed, Bam in particular, that was a 1 year deal difference with $80 million on his contract that he just lost out on. So I would feel some type of way as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
And Bam is a guy who he just gets overlooked a whole lot
Mhm.
because of what we just talked about. Not only is he more of a defender than a scorer, obviously, he's a defender in a way that's not loud and that you have to really watch what happens on the play before the shot goes up, which is not the typical way people watch the game, right? You
Yeah.
have to see, all right, he's guarded 4 players on this possession. None of them can get by him, and then he not blocked the shot, but he contested the shot.
Yeah.
If you're just kind of, and I understand it also because when the voters come out and it's more detailed, you see, okay, this guy just writes for Utah's newspaper. This guy is local over here in OKC. I don't have the expectation, especially now. We're heading towards the end of our first season doing this. It is very difficult to keep up with the whole league and not burn yourself out. I was telling Lou before we got started, my gas tank has been on E for like 2 months.
Yeah.
But it's a tough thing to do. So I'm no longer the person who blames these voters and stuff for not watching the games, quote unquote, because it's just not possible. Even when Stephen A comes out and he says something ridiculous about a player or says a player's on a roster and he's not anymore, I look at how often he's on TV and it's like there's no way he's realistically able to keep up in that sense. And so for me personally, I think these things are great to do and it's great to honor players. Obviously, feel a little bad for the guys who missed out on paydays, but congratulations to the guys who are getting them.
Yep.
Especially the guys in their second contracts looking for a third one. Now they're eligible for more money and setting themselves up better for the rest of their lives beyond the NBA. Because by the time those contracts are over, they'll be in their 30s most likely. So congratulations to all those guys. But from the fan perspective, I learned a long time ago not to take these things a little too serious. For all the reasons I named, it's just kind of difficult to really blame voters, first of all, knowing how much they have to keep up with to really be accurate with this. And the simple fact that it is kind of all based on opinion. And you research what you can and you look up the numbers if you miss the games and you kind of figure it out from there. But there are only 24 hours in a day. You sleep 8 of them and that knocks you down to 16. And then there's so much stuff going on. There's nights where if the NBA decides there's going to be 12 games that night, and then you got to catch up and figure out what happened. So congratulations to the player, but it's something to take with a grain of salt in a sense. If your money's not affected and our money's not affected by this.
Yeah. One more quick tidbit to point out. The only two guys who got all 99 first place votes were Shea and Jokic. So,
MVP
obviously,
and MVP runner-up.
Yeah, shout out to those two guys. Some of the guys who got snubbed, Jaylen Brown, he was the closest person in third place. Unfortunate for him. He's had a very good season, obviously.
Yeah.
Wemby getting second and third place votes as a rookie is crazy. Not because he's not deserving. It's just crazy how talented he is that he's even, a conversation can be had. I thought Tyrese Maxey had a phenomenal year. Wasn't able to make one of the rosters. Maybe that was the one guy that I would have considered who didn't make it. But all in all, I think the list is very fair. It's pretty comparable. I don't really care the difference between first and second team.
Right.
You can argue Jalen Brunson deserved to be first team, and I'd be cool with it. You can say he was the 6th best player this year, and I'd be cool with that as well too. Like, I see both sides of the tale, so that's not a big deal. But just in general, I thought it was a pretty good, pretty fair voting, at least for this award this season.
Yeah, and the thing with snubs in general, whether it's awards in first team or, well, not necessarily awards because those are more individual, but whether it's NBA teams, defensive teams, or all-star, with snubs in general, a few years ago, I just came to the point where I'm not allowing myself to say, and I'm fully aware to the audience that Lou didn't mean it in this way, but I don't allow myself to say that a player got snubbed unless I'm able to decide on who I take off of, whether it's the all-star team, whether it's all NBA, whether it's all defense. I don't allow myself to say a player got snubbed because there's so much talent in the NBA. There are guys who deserves it. And so if you switch Tyrese Maxey out with somebody, I would have been fine with it. If it would have been Jalen Brunson for somebody, I'd be fine with it. But I can't look at this list right here and really single out anybody where I just feel like they're not deserving. And so hey, again, congratulations to the guys who made it. Sorry for the guys who missed out on the money, but I'm not too mad at it. I never am anyway. But particularly, this is a really good list. These are really good three good teams.
Yeah. Soon there'll be a fourth team. That's how good the league is. So.
It's a great idea. I ain't gonna lie. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Playoff File. I'm Kenny. Make sure you subscribe. I don't care if you follow me on social media, nothing like that. I don't even have a phone. Subscribe. Lou, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good, man. Conference finals basketball is back, and we have been treated to 2 treats of games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frankie is still out. DNP, other shit to do. He'll be fine. He'll be back. He said Sunday. I don't hold people to that stuff. People have stuff to do. Like I said about myself, I'm exhausted. So even if he's just tired, I understand it, but he'll be back. Let's go ahead and get into the game that just ended. Dallas Mavericks versus – that's how tired I am. I just watched the game. Dallas Mavericks versus Minnesota Timberwolves. Luka Doncic, 33 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. Kyrie Irving, 30 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Kyrie went off in the first half. He said in the post game he was a little motivated by Anthony Edwards saying he got him. That could be a thing there. It could be interesting. On the Minnesota side, Anthony Edwards, near triple-double, 19 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. Jaden McDaniels, 24 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. This is going to be a good series. This is going to be a great series. Shout out to the Mavs for just becoming this defensive stalwart of a team in some sense, seemingly overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point, their defense was bad in the season. So credit to them for that. I didn't really think they'd be able to hang with the Timberwolves. I didn't give a prediction last time, because I typically don't, but I didn't think they'd be able to hang with the Timberwolves in this way in the Timberwolves' house. Granted, the Wolves just played a 7-game series. Those are real grueling, all that stuff, whatever. But credit to the Dallas Mavericks, man.
No, a great game, especially from their stars. As I was thinking about a lot during before the game, I was like, maybe Dallas can win just for the simple fact they're going to be in so much drop. And what did we see today? Again, this is no slight on Rudy Gobert. Mm-hmm. I will never do that. I think he is elite at what he does defensively. And he was good today defensively, affecting the rim. But Luka and Kyrie were Luka and Kyrie. Sometimes great players make great shots. Good defense, better offense, kind of thing. And Kyrie had struggled, in particular against OKC at times, to get the ball in the basket, did other things well, but to score efficiently.
Yeah.
So did Luka. And today, I thought Minnesota had a great game plan. They were literally forcing everything into the paint or the mid-range area. Like they were running people off the 3-point line. Dallas shot bad from the 3-point line, and yet they won the game.
Yeah.
They made 6 3-pointers compared to, McDaniels alone made 6 3-pointers. So he tied them as a team, but they made 18. So 12 more threes, a 36-point difference in 3-pointers. And yet Minnesota could not capitalize and win the game. So that just goes to show you just how fucking ridiculous the arsenal, the repertoire for scoring is for these two guys, and the level of shot making that they displayed today. It was funny. Luka had 14 in the first half. Kyrie he was 11 for 14 in the first half. They had 38 points, and you're like, oh, there's no way they're going to keep this up. And boom, they finished with 63. Luka didn't score his first point in the second half to 3 minutes left in the third quarter. And I was watching it live on playback. And then here you go. It's fucking 15 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. Ridiculous outburst. Tough shot making. Great defense by McDaniels. I don't know, Kenny, what Minnesota can do to make this series I think they played their game. Like, I think this was a beautiful game plan from Chris Finch to, basically not let nobody shoot threes, force everything off the line. And, credit to obviously Kyrie and Luka. Huge credit to Derek Lively. He was fucking incredible. Crazy. You can pick a rookie and he contributes this much for a team that's in a conference finals. Like, perfect 4 for 4, 11 rebounds, 27 minutes, plus 19, 4 offensive rebounds, just putback after putback. Just, oh my goodness, incredible energy. But Dallas today looked like they had a little bit more pep in their step, and they were able to capitalize on the road.
Yeah, so part of that probably was the difference in the time that was spent playing. Like I said, Minnesota just had a game 7 a couple of days ago, but also Minnesota did kind of switch up towards the end and started to blitz a little more, because dropping against Kyrie and Luka is tough, not only because they're so creative, but because they're so efficient in that little middle area. Neither one of them is going to really miss a floater, and if they do, it's pretty shocking. And I don't want to, again, this is not the disparage Rudy Gobert show. We don't, if you listen to older episodes or other episodes, we fully understand Rudy Gobert's capabilities on defense. Incredible rim protector. But I think the game plan is going to be tough for Minnesota against this team, because the Mavs can draw him out without shooting a bunch of threes. You can give up threes at times and just kind of hope the team misses. Some teams tend to do that, but they're going to get 2 points on you if you drop too deep.
Yep.
And Rudy Gobert does a good job of covering that ground very often, but it's kind of tough when you're dealing with, you really have to get in Luka's face when he comes off that pick and roll. You really have to get in Kyrie's face when he comes off that pick and roll. And so that's going to bring Rudy Gobert out even more. And now you're able to set up maybe Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford in a dunker spot, or maybe skip pass out to PJ Washington. Now that open things up a little more. And it could end up being tough for Minnesota. But I don't want to think too much after game 1. Like I said, they didn't have legs tonight. That was pretty apparent at times. But just great game by the Mavs, just in general.
Yeah, and to the point that you're making, Luka and Kyrie being so elite at picking apart that space when they're in a drop, it's because they're so good at keeping their defender in jail, and basically just controlling and dictating everything from there. And it's gonna get like, that is one of the hardest things to do as a big, is contain like a 2-on-1 essentially, because when the defender's in jail, he's not guarding anybody.
Right.
I think they did a pretty decent job of that today. But again, how decent of a job can you do against these two level of players? I don't know, Kenny, if you happened to see the OGs podcast with the Goran Dragic interview. How
I've been meaning to.
Yeah, how he was basically talking about UD was bringing up Rudy Gobert and what Goran thought about the depoys, and Goran was like, in his obviously in his Slovenian accent, he was like he licked his fingers. He's like, whenever I saw Rudy and drop, because it gives him space to operate.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Gobert is bad, but it gives these elite offensive players who are typically good with no space to operate. Once you give them that space, it doesn't matter who that defender is. You've already provided to them the ability to get to spots that they're comfortable in.
Yeah.
And that is the first thing that I was like, as soon as I started seeing, I thought they were going to blitz more. I thought they were going to force passes more, rotate, but Minnesota, that's not the kind of defense they play. And rightfully so, because Jaden McDaniels is fucking incredible navigating screens. And, he was playing his ass off defensively. Luka hit, I think I counted like 5 step back mid-range shots just in the fourth quarter, or 4 maybe. Like, it was crazy, the level of shot making. But ultimately, that was the difference today.
Yeah, and to the point of Gobert and drop, and teams kind of seeing that as a easy thing to attack. Well, not teams, but players. It's a little because a lot of shot blocking also creates intimidation in certain players. So, and we saw the Wemby clips of players deciding to get away from the basket when he was there, whatever it is. Rudy Gobert also does that to a lot of people, but you're not doing that to Kyrie and Luka.
Mm-hmm.
And Goran having that mentality also for anybody who may not be Miami Heat fans, doesn't really know. There was a point in Goran Dragic's career where his finishing numbers were as good or better than Steph Curry and Kyrie. Like, he was an elite finisher at some point.
Yep.
And so him in that space also, same thing. So when you see a Rudy Gobert in that sense, you're not too worried about it. But I do worry about Minnesota going forward just with Rudy Gobert in this series. This is not to knock Rudy Gobert. This is not the Rudy Gobert gets played off the floor conversation, whatever
Absolutely
it is. But
fucking not. Like,
it's not. But playoffs a lot of times are about matchups. And I don't know if Naz Reid shouldn't not take over Rudy's minutes. That's ridiculous. But maybe get more minutes at the 5 to kind of handle that space and have a little more foot speed and quickness against those two. And then if one of those guys goes out, then obviously Rudy Gobert plays a little more. But I think maybe that could also be the answer or an answer. But I don't know if this is the series for Rudy Gobert specifically.
Yeah, at least in this scheme, right?
Right.
Because Rudy can move his feet well, at least at the level defensively. Mm-hmm. It's just the drop aspect is the one that's going to kill them, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see how that changes. I do think maybe Naz getting a couple more minutes at the 5 and them changing the schemes or throwing, even with Rudy on the floor, just throwing. I don't think you can survive defensively giving guys like Kyrie and Luka the same look over and over again. They're going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what happened today. And I understand, like, they've already seen every look possible. Mm-hmm. That's what makes them so special. But at the same time, it's like, okay, every time down the floor, if I'm going to get this look by, we saw it today, by the fourth quarter, Luka was like, oh, this is what I'm getting. This is baby food. Like, I know what I'm going to get. So I'm going to get to this spot and I feel comfortable with this jumper. Now, with that being said, is there anything offensively, Kenny, that you think Minnesota can do? Because today they struggled on that end of the floor. In particular, Towns and Edwards were not the most efficient.
That's tough to say because the Mavs are a team. They have rim protectors. Their rim protectors can really move. They're really freakishly athletic. So I can't even say play faster because Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford are also pretty fast. I think it's kind of just a matter of them making their shots. Mm-hmm. And that's all. That's the best they can do. Because, again, it was still a close game and it probably shouldn't have been. So I could just say make their shots. This was a game where Jaden McDaniels went off. Great. But and as great as he's been in the playoffs, you probably don't want to rely on that too much either. So this is now a time to where Minnesota just kind of has to, and man, maybe once again play Naz Reid a little, have him eat into Rudy Gobert's minutes a little more, because there are a lot of times where Rudy Gobert will give you a little something on offense, but there are times where he's an easy offensive player to scheme against because he doesn't give you much aside from very easy looks and stuff off of offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
And so maybe a little more Naz Reid to be able to spread the floor out a little more for Anthony Edwards to get to the basket and force rotations and make the defense actually do stuff. Because there were times in the game tonight where that just didn't happen. And I don't think, especially with this improved Dallas defense as of late, that's just not something you can do. That's also a team you can't, on the offensive end at least, you can't do the same thing against too much because they'll figure it out pretty fast.
Yeah, I thought today some of Minnesota's best looks were coming off of surprisingly the Towns Gobert pick and rolls.
Yeah.
They caught like three. I think there was like 3 lobs that Towns threw to Gobert on those. It's just because it makes it tough because, like you stated, they're trying to keep PJ Washington obviously on Towns, so he's going over these screens, but the center's just a little bit up, and Gobert's able to get it over the back. I think my biggest takeaway is not let Anthony Edwards have to do everything.
Right.
By that, I mean, and I know he shot bad today or inefficient, but by that, what I mean by that is you brought Mike Conley for a reason. Let him initiate some more offense.
Yeah.
I thought today Anthony Edwards was gassed by the fourth
Mhm.
quarter, like visibly very tired. And this is what you brought Mike Conley here for. Like
Mhm.
realistically, like that's why you traded for him, is so he can take some of the playmaking responsibility. I know he's not the
Yeah.
scorer that Anthony Edwards is, but
Mhm.
get Anthony Edwards off the ball a little more in some motions with some momentum so he can get more to the basket and less on these jump shots. He
Mhm.
shot 6 of 16 today. 12 of those 16 shots were jumpers
Yeah,
beyond
that
the
can't happen.
3-point line. Like 12 3-pointers attempted.
That can't happen.
That's cool, but you're playing into Dallas' scheme. Anthony
Yeah.
Edwards needs to get downhill. 12 3-pointers and 2 free throws is not going to be the key for them offensively.
Right.
That's just where I'm at.
And to your point, also let Karl Anthony Towns a little more. The two man or two big pick and roll worked a lot, because the main thing with having a big who can initiate in pick and roll is now you're putting a big in pick and roll and having him have to navigate screens, and bigs are
Exactly.
not used to that. And so that also gives you an advantage. Just probably lean into that a little more, not only the two big pick and roll, but an inverted pick and roll. So now Anthony Edwards is the roller, or you have him pop or whatever it is, get him involved in those ways and make things a little easier for him in some sense, because we've seen from him all year, really all of his career, he just needs to see one or two go in, and then he's Anthony Edwards. So I think that's another thing they can possibly do, but they just didn't really have it tonight in that way, aside from a couple guys. And again, it's not an excuse. Like, tired legs are a real thing, trust me. But they just kind of didn't have it in the cards when they went tonight for the things you listed. So I would think find other ways to get Anthony Edwards involved, like you did in Game 7 and the other games where he kind of struggled from the field. Have other ways to kind of get him into it when he doesn't have it. But I don't really want to judge them too much until Game 2, because like I said, coming off of Game 7, if they're not at home, it's a scheduled loss in some sense. But that just kind of is what it is. So I'll really judge them and figure out what they definitely need to do in Game 2 and what adjustment they need to make. But I do think initiating through other people a little more is a great idea that you have.
Yeah, series isn't over. It's one game.
Yeah.
Shit. If people who thought the series was over against Denver when it was 2-0 were the same people who thought it was over when Denver was up 3-2. Like, it's playoff fucking level basketball, for God's sake. Like, nobody fucking knows. Until somebody wins 4 games, nobody has advanced.
Boston Celtics, Indiana Pacers. So the Celtics are clearly the favorites to win. But I like Indiana. I'm not gonna say they're gonna win the series, but I like what I saw from them in Game 1. Tyrese Halliburton with 25 points, 10 assists. Miles Turner with 23 and 10 rebounds. Pascal Siakam with 24 points and 12 rebounds. The Pacers don't have the defense to keep up with the Celtics, but their offense definitely can, with their pace and not being able to let the Celtics defense really set up. And then the Celtics have these lapses that I don't understand coming from a great team.
Yes.
So Indiana can take advantage of those things in some sense. And they did for a lot of last game, and then they kind of blew it at the end. The officiating sucked, but I'm not the guy that blames officials for losses unless it's like blatantly obvious, like a real like Scott Foster masterclass type deal. But I think Indiana, I don't even want to say they have a puncher's chance because the Celtics adjust really well, but
yeah,
I don't want to call it a miracle either. But in a world where Indiana wins the series, what do you feel like they have to do?
Okay, so defensively, it starts with fouling less. I know the officials were a thing, but they did pick up some fouls where I was like, come on, like you had them already in a box, like you're giving them a chance. Some loose ball fouls, like little things to help the Celtics, basically Do that. Also, grab defensive rebounds.
Mhm.
Boston is a very good offensive rebounding team. For a team that's not too big, they need to do a better job closing out those defensive possessions. And offensively is like, okay, this is what I'll say about the Pacers. The Pacers are probably one of the, if not the most prolific offense. It doesn't fucking make sense how good they are offensively.
Mhm.
The worst way for your offense to function offensively, especially a team this good, is when you don't even get an opportunity to shoot the ball.
Right.
Take care of the fucking ball. Like,
Mhm.
hold on to that shit. Like, that shit is everything in
Yeah.
your life, because realistically, I think that the 21 turnovers was the thing that cost him that game.
Mhm.
The decision making, it's cool, I guess, or it's fun to make fun of Hallie for dribbling it off his foot. And then he had another play. Like, I don't give a fuck, man. Like, I'm not blaming a player for 2 plays when
Right.
the other 67 plays that he made were fucking incredible.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But yes, he definitely needs to be more careful with the ball. Neesmith had 5 turnovers. Toppin had Butterfingers for like a good stretch in the second quarter. Like, these little mental errors, mental mistakes were the difference, in my opinion. They had the game won. But then the turnovers, the lack of execution sometimes, like, it's ridiculous, because the Pacers' worst looks offensively when they were getting a shot up was Pascal Siakam mid-ranger with a guy 3 feet away, or not even 3 feet, like 6-7 feet away. Like, it was a decently open mid-range. That was your worst offense, Kenny. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's an open guy, because everything else was a pretty open 3-pointer or a shot at the bucket.
Mhm.
Like, I do think, obviously I just came and say, like, the series isn't over, and I don't think it is, but damn, would Indy being up 1-0 make a
Mhm.
big difference for them in this series, in my opinion. Not saying the series is over, but
Right.
there's a big difference between being up 1-0 to being down 1-0, especially when you were not given a chance. Like,
Right.
you get what I'm saying? Like, they
Mhm.
weren't given a chance. Now, at the same time, they just saw what they did. They didn't play well, and they lost by 5 in OT.
Mhm.
So there's no way you can tell somebody in that Indy locker room, like, no, you guys aren't good enough to beat this team.
Right. So they definitely come away with it with a little more belief in themselves, especially with, again, they played a long series and the Celtics had like a week and a half off. But they definitely have to be kicking themselves with the turnovers. And this is something we've spoken about, I think, in episode 1 with the Indiana Pacers offense. There's a difference between playing fast and rushing. When they play fast and they're in transition, they're a great team. But sometimes when they're in the half court, they keep that mentality and they start rushing things. So now it's a lot of unforced turnovers. So you'll hit Miles Turner in the pinch post, and he'll swing it real quick to, let's say, Neesmith, who didn't realize he was getting the ball already. He was about to cut or go screen away or something, and it goes out of bounds. And then you have the situations where Tyrese Halliburton is dribbling off himself, and it's just unforced errors from them just not taking their time in the half court where they should be taking their time. I'm not going to say they're a bad half court offense, because they're not.
No.
They're so prolific in transition, it would just seem that way because it's still night and day in some sense. But definitely they just have to kind of have their composure in the half court a little more. Now, Pascal Siakam helps with that a ton.
Yes.
He is their, I don't even want to call him a release valve because he's so much more than just that. But he is somebody they can go to in the half court and get an easy bucket or maybe a tough bucket. He's just able to score in the half court. But it can't just be one guy.
Yeah.
It can't be one guy. Tyrese Halliburton, he scores well in the half court also. Sometimes those are very tough shots also. Very long threes, incredible when they go in, but sometimes he kind of settles. Sometimes they kind of settle in the half court in some sense. So you do want to kind of see that difference in production between the transition game and half court offense kind of shrink a little, but I think the Pacers can be fine. But like you said, stealing one in Boston for game 1 would have been huge for them. So they're definitely kicking themselves because they could have easily won that game. But the series isn't over yet. I'm not going to count them out like I'm sure everybody else is. I'm sure you're also not counting them out like everybody
No.
else is.
No,
But
man.
they have very small adjustments to make. The Celtics, again, almost blew that game. There was a point in time where both teams just seemed like they were trying to lose.
Yes,
And-
nobody wanted to win.
Yeah, but it's the Pacers just have to really hope the Celtics haven't tightened those screws and figured that out in film already or something.
And they did the second half. They went to a lot of
Mhm.
like the 2-3 zone with Drew Holiday as the center.
Mhm.
And obviously just switching the Miles Turner, the Hadley Turner pick and roll. They were putting Horford on like Neesmith or on somebody in the corner just so that pick and roll would be a switch, whether it was Tatum or Brown on Turner. So that kind of bogged down Indy's offense, but the offense wasn't the issue. Like they shot 54% from the field, 37 from three. Like those are fucking really good numbers. The issue was the turnovers. I think something that Boston took very good advantage of, in particular, Drew Holiday was really good game one. Bullying the smaller players.
Yeah.
Whether that was or weaker players, because Halley's bigger than him, but he's just not as strong. Whether it was Halley, whether it was TJ on him or Ben Shepherd, or Nemhart, like, you know, he was able to get to that like 7-8 foot fadeaway he likes, right in front of the rim, and provide in much of the same way Siakam was doing some, you know, timely buckets. That's what, in my opinion, that's what Drew Holiday was doing for the Celtics. Was just able to keep them at peace and to basically settle them down when it was time.
Yeah, and that's what he's there for. The Celtics over the years have kind of just their offense was kind of go into disarray. Whether it would be the your turn, my turn thing with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, or Jaylen Brown just turning the ball over a whole bunch, or Tatum just settling for the jumper and taking bad shots a lot of times. And those things still happen at times.
Yeah.
But Drew Holiday and his veteran presence and his championship experience and unselfishness, he calms that down a lot faster than it would get calmed down in previous years. So I think now, deep in the playoffs, is when we'll really see the impact Drew Holiday was brought in for. Because during the season, you didn't really see it too much. First couple of series, you didn't really see it too much. But now is the time we're going to really see Drew Holiday and why he's in Boston.
Yeah, and he led the team in minutes, played 48 of them. Like,
damn.
Was everywhere defensively. And it's crazy to say that considering they gave up 128, but like that's just how prolific the offense was on the other side. But you know, he did make Halley uncomfortable several times, had to make him get off the ball. Obviously, the turnover, had one where it was almost a turnover on the same sideline. Like, you know, like he was locked in this game, and ultimately, I think he was the biggest difference as to why they were able to win, aside from Jason Tatum. Tatum played very well. I think that's going to be the case all series. Neesmith has to stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah.
If Indy wants to win, he is their best answer at guarding Tatum and at guarding Jaylen Brown. So he has to stay out of foul trouble so he can be on the floor and provide. Because he was also very good offensively. Aaron was. So like he can provide some kind of resistance, because once he got out of the game and they put in TJ McConnell again was fucking incredible. But having McConnell, Nemhard, and Hadley is too small against the Boston team. So it was just tough for them to contend with their size and strength and the offensive rebounding at that point, because they were just a little too tiny.
And I want to give some credit to Joe Mazzulla. Really, just in general, he's a great coach, man. I don't think he gets the credit he really deserves, because the coaching change in Boston was a little awkward. Obviously, the situation with Ime Udoka happened and all that stuff. And Joe Mazzulla is, I've noticed, polarizing in Boston, but he is a fucking great coach, man.
Thank you.
I want to point out a specific play at the end of regulation. So teams haven't been fouling up three in these playoffs. I don't really understand why, usually, but when Jaylen Brown hit the shot in the corner to send it to overtime, my first reaction was, why wouldn't you foul on that possession? And then they showed the replay, and I was like, oh, Joe Mazzulla is probably a fucking genius. Just the screen to just get Jaylen Brown just enough space to where Siakam had to really make some effort on his closeout. And now if he fouled, Jaylen could easily just go up and create the contact and get the 3 shots. I think that was very heady by Joe Mazzulla. And Pascal Siakam couldn't have done, just based on the circumstances of him getting the screen and closing out, he couldn't have done a better job avoiding the foul when Jaylen Brown went up to shoot it. Jaylen just made a ridiculous shot.
Yeah, it was
going in.
Crazy. It was a crazy baseline out of bounds. Like literally when I saw it before the shot went up, I was like, what a fucking play. Because they were going to foul. Yeah. Like Siakam looked like he was running over there to foul intentionally. Mm-hmm. And then he pulled away because he was like, oh shit, I don't want to foul him shooting a 3.
That's why he put his hands behind his back.
Yeah, that's why his hands were behind his back. The iconic picture. It looks like it looks like he really had to go to the bathroom. It's a funny picture. But I digress. No, but realistically, it was a tough predicament to be in. I was telling my friend that, I understand why he didn't foul, but if it was me in that position, obviously hindsight's 2020, I would have just fouled Jaylen Brown, forced him to take the 3 free throws, made sure he didn't get the shot off, because Jaylen he hasn't been good at the free throw line in the postseason this year. And he wasn't particularly, he was 5 for 8 so far in that game. So I don't know what that is, like 62% or something like that. My math may fail me there, but just, he hasn't been the best. 61.5 for the postseason at the free throw line. And I was telling him, like, I'd rather put the pressure on him to make 3 free throws. And if he does, then so be it. We call a timeout, but I don't know. That's kind of just where my mind was at. I understand why he didn't do it, because he didn't want to, ideally, that's not where you're thinking is like, oh, I'm going to intentionally foul a 3-point shooter so he can get 3 opportunities. But we saw it today. Like Mike Conley missed the second free throw, like demoralizing for Minnesota. Shit, fuck it. Put the pressure on them, man. Like that's probably the only complaint. Hindsight's 2020. But the Mazzulla slander is unwarranted in my opinion, just because he's funny to make fun of because of his last name or whatever it may be, or he's young, he's on the Celtics, like he's given
the town thing.
Yeah.
Like all that,
The he doesn't practice set plays, like that's all cool, man. The guy is clearly very analytics and data driven. And for his second season, I would say he's doing a pretty fucking good job. Say what you want to say, as much as it irks me to say, because I'm not a Boston fan, no matter how much I can praise them on this show. I do not like them. But I'm also very
no biases over here.
Yeah, I'm not going to be biased. Basketball first for sure. And Mazzulla is he does a great job. He adjusted very well in the second half. The baseline out of bounds play was very well. Was a very solid ran play. I thought him shortening the rotation to giving Cornette less minutes and just practically fully trusting and believing in Horford so he can have some more mobility. I thought making Tatum guard the screener so they can switch some of those matchups or blitz some of those, like all those little things that he was doing during the course of this game is shit that like elite level coaches make, or very good coaches make. But just because the stigma against him is that he's bad, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take time for people to realize that he's actually a very good basketball mind.
And when you really peel the layers back and understand, he's in his second season as a head coach in the NBA.
Yeah, he's 3 years younger than Al Horford, who's on the same team. So
man, just as a Miami Heat fan, you kind of not envy it because the Heat have the best coach in the league, but you definitely watch out for a player who's that quote unquote inexperienced being that good already with that good of a roster, and give credit what credit is due. That good of a front office. Because to turn Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams basically into and Marcus Smart into Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, like that's just a masterful offseason for a team that looked like they were right on the brink of a championship.
Yep.
They were less than a calendar year, well, a little over a calendar year away from a finals appearance. So for them to be able to do that, and Malcolm Brogdon, I don't think Rob Williams played at all this season. If he did, he played very little at the beginning.
Yeah.
Malcolm Brogdon obviously was in and out. So to turn those assets into what they got back as what was already an elite team, look, even as a Miami Heat fan, they've been rivals since I was 16 years old. I'm turning 32 in a month and a half. I got to give credit where it's due, man. Boston is doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Obviously getting Derek White for Josh Richardson.
Yeah, like these like
these ancillary quote unquote moves. That's how you build sustainable contending teams.
Yeah.
Is sometimes not by acquiring a star. It's by acquiring star role players. And that's exactly what they've done.
And man, as Miami Heat fans, that's a whole conversation we could have.
That's why I phrased it exactly the way I fucking did, Kenny. That's why I did that.
We're gonna leave it at that though, man, because we can talk about that playing in the offseason. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Playoff Hour. I'm Kenny. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to at Kenny Spence NBA. Literally could not care less if you do. Just make sure you subscribe to the show, man. Lou, where could the people find you?
It's going to be at Saucy Takes on Twitter and on Playback. I've been going on Playback Live, doing a lot of prospect breakdowns for this upcoming NBA draft. If you're listening and you're a fan of one of the top teams, tune in, man. Follow me on Twitter. I have some dope content coming up. Just trying to get to 500 followers as well. I'm 2 away, so
get Lou to 1,000.
1,000, man. Shit, I'm comfortable with 500, Kenny. But just basically on Twitter and Playback. You know where to find me over here on Playoff Hour. But we got some draft content coming up, man. June 26th. Stay tuned.
Like the music dude, that's my brother Devin. His Instagram is Black Glow Music. Make sure you follow that and make sure you download his beat EPs. That said, we'll see y'all next time.